We were talking some time ago, Ronnie, about how vegans, not necessarily animal rights people, but vegans in general, coped during the pandemic. Um, I think some people did remarkably well, and yet others really showed a side of themselves that I was quite shocked by. Did you have any similar experiences?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing, I, I I I mean, I'm not keen to talk about the pandemic in the past tense, like saying, it's something in the past where, and how people coped in the past, because of course it's still with us. The
Yeah,
pandemic is
yes, it
very much
is.
with us. And a hell of a lot more people could still become very ill and could still die. So it's very much a thing that's ongoing, sadly.
Mm.
And I think it's vegans and animal rights people, and of course, often they're the same people, or sometimes they're the same people. They're not the same people.
Occasionally.
Yeah, they're not the same people enough. I mean, all vegans should be animal liberationists, and all
Of
vegans
course.
should be, campaigners and vegan educators, and like not just passive non-consumers of
Well,
animals. But of course, I mean, I believe that very strongly, and I say it many, many times.
right.
But as a whole, like that whole, the whole kind of vegan movement. I mean, I tend to think that in general, um, vegans haven't haven't handled the pandemic very well at all. In general, I think it's been a negative thing.
Mm.
Um, I think for various reasons. I think first of all, um, there's been a lot of arguing and squabbling over it. There's been this kind of somehow, like, loads of people have started believing in conspiracy theories regarding
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
and then there's been disputes between those people and people that don't believe in these conspiracy theories, and that was first of all just to do with does the virus really exist? Where did it come from?
Yes.
How serious is it? And of course, then later on, after the vaccine was developed, a big row about should vegans be vaccinated
Vaccine.
or
Yeah.
not vaccinated. You
And
see,
if they do, are they vegan?
well,
That's
yes. I
yeah.
mean,
It's a
that's
tricky one.
obviously been something that's been raised. I mean, so these disputes have arisen all the time. Right, pretty much from the beginning. And I kind of think it's very sad because you see, this. I mean, less people believe that it was kind of manufactured in a laboratory in China, which no doubt some figures probably believe. I mean, and I suppose there's some possibility of that, but I think the kind of the probability, and I think the strong probability is this did arise from, you know, from the oppression and exploitation of other animals, from wet markets, for
Yeah.
instance, because that's happened so many times before.
It has.
I mean,
Ebola. Yeah, things like that.
all these things. Well, going right back over 100 years, the Spanish flu came
Yes.
from, came from farmed animals.
Yeah.
You see, and that killed millions and millions and millions of people. The Spanish flu, and so there's a history of these things actually coming from animals, whether it's the oppression of wildlife, where humans go into wildlife areas and going in, going into the areas and coming into contact with wild animals that
Mm.
they wouldn't otherwise be in contact, and which they shouldn't really be in contact with. Just leave them alone. Don't go into their homelands.
They don't come
Um,
into our houses and sit
yeah.
on the tea and watch TV,
Well,
do they?
well, I mean, of course, the thing is, when they do come into our houses,
We kill them.
then we kill them. Well, but hang on, wait a minute, who's here first?
Exactly.
Like people complain, a badger came into my garden and damaged something, or a fox came, or a squirrel dug something up. And you think, well, hang on a minute, who was here first?
Exactly.
Who was here first? That used to be a wood where you are with your
Mm.
bloody garden and your neatly trimmed bloody
Hedges and
totally wildlife unfriendly lawn. You
exactly.
know that you know that used to be woodland and animals used to live there before bloody humans expanded and took over everything. So hang on, you're they've got more right to be there than you. And if a mole
Yes.
digs up your lawn, that mole's got more right to dig up your lawn than what you've got. And then people go mad because like a mole dug a hole in a cricket pitch because some stupid buggers want to throw a ball at some sticks.
It's
And
ridiculous.
so well, we'll kill these animals so we can throw a ball at
Play
some
cricket,
sticks
yeah.
and hit a ball with another
Makes
stick, or
no
kick a ball
sense.
into a net, or hit a ball into a hole with a stick. And that's more important than the lives of other animals. I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, years and years back, there was a bloody golf club. They were going to kill foxes. Oh, foxes had dug
Yeah.
up the greens, and we can't fuck around hitting the ball into a hole, And they were going to like, kill the foxes. So ALF people went and dug the bloody greens up and said, "There you go. Now I think you prefer the foxes, wouldn't you?" Now, and I think they said, "All right, we won't kill the foxes." You know what I mean? Because like they realised that it was like far worse. The humans can actually dig.
Sometimes people just have to be brought back to reality. And I think this also applies to what we're talking about,
Yeah,
how just a shake-up can either make people think in a strange way or actually turn their brains round to think quietly about a situation and actually appraise that situation before going into total panic mode.
yes, yeah,
And I think it's very much dependent on personality and character. I mean, many of us might be vegan, but we're all completely different character-wise, personality-wise, and in
yeah,
the way we came to veganism.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
sorry,
I think that's no. I think that's absolutely right.
mm,
We're not all made out of the same mould at all. And in the sense, you wouldn't want that to be the case,
mm,
because I think that's like, we need people to bring lots of different skills and abilities to veganism and to animal liberation campaign, and we need people that are different. But
mm.
we don't really need people that are bonkers.
No,
It's,
definitely.
and
That
of
doesn't
course,
help.
I'm going back. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of digressed a little bit talking about
Yeah,
the golf
but
courses
we
being dug
all.
up and the cricket pitches being dug up and all that, so people can't play their stupid games. Anyway, but I mean, yes, I mean, first of all, there was this whole thing about, where's the thing come from, and it's some conspiracy that's created this virus to ravage the world, for some aims of a secretive organisation wanting to take over everything, or some bollocks. But the thing is, the evidence isn't that. The evidence is these things. And Viva, according to Viva, 3 out of 4 diseases that affect humans are zoonotic. In other words, they come from other animals, and they've jumped to humans through human oppression of other animals. As I said, either through incursion to wildlife areas, capturing those animals and eating them, having them in wet markets and stuff, or through factory farming. Because what happens is, if you have factory farming and you have a load of animals come together, right, then a zoonotic disease can jump from
One to the other.
like a wild animal into the captive animals. And because there's so many of them came together, because of the amount of virus and spread of virus that creates, you're going to get much more chance of a mutation there that will then jump into humans. And that's kind of why factory farming is like such a dangerous thing for the spread of virus to humans.
And also, Ronnie, sorry, if creatures like cows are kept in great numbers and they're stressed, their immune system is compromised, which means that in normal conditions, that they can normally knock off anything that comes their way that's dangerous to them. But when they're kept in great numbers, which is the way farming has gone over the past 20 odd years, their immune system is compromised and they have no protection whatsoever.
Oh yes, I mean, yeah, absolutely, and that means that more can be infected, and the whole thing can spread amongst them, and then you'll get a mutation eventually. Because natural selection is natural selection. Like viruses are mutating all the time, because they say about this variant, that variant, the other variant. There's loads and loads of variants in actual fact. There's only certain ones that can actually infect humans. Because they're mutating, you see, and it's like kind of natural selection on acid, if you see what I mean.
Way to go.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So first of all, there's that, and like immediately, it's an argument for veganism. If everyone had been vegan, we wouldn't have this bloody thing.
No.
Because it wouldn't have arisen, because we wouldn't have oppressed animals, and those viruses wouldn't have jumped from, we wouldn't have none of these bloody
One
things,
species
SARS,
to
Ebola, and, we wouldn't have had Spanish flu. I mean, we wouldn't have the climate crisis if it wasn't for, the oppression of those. But that's a related separate subject. And so that's the first problem. You've got that, whether is this really like, where's it come from, and all these like mad theories about other things that it came from, other than the most likely thing, which is from other animals, and because humans oppress other animals, and that's the thing. And I think that I think Viva actually have kind of approached the pandemic very well. Out of all the organised, I mean, obviously, just about the UK, is not too aware of what's going on in other countries, but I think of the organisations I think PETA did something at the beginning, PETA UK, about that link between the oppression of other animals and the pandemic. But then Viva really kind of took off with it, and they produced a lot of materials to do it. I mean, they've got a leaflet called "Animal Farming is Killing Us," which is just precisely that. They've got the 3 and 4 campaign. 3 and 4 viruses that affect humans come from animals and our oppression of other animals. Right? And we've door dropped probably thousands, several thousands of those locally to educate people, and it's another way of getting people to go vegan. You wouldn't have this bloody thing.
When their lives are threatened, they'll do anything.
Well, it's another way in, isn't it? It's another way in to get people to go, and a golden opportunity to use something like kind of really topical, to educate people to go vegan. We've done that, but I haven't seen that, kind of really widespread throughout our movement. We haven't seized that. I mean, we've done videos. We do video. Our local vegan group, we do video advertising on social media.
Brilliant.
To promote veganism, and we've done some anti-vivisection ones as well, but it's mainly and other things, but it's mainly promoting veganism, and we've done them on the pandemic as well. We did one about how it comes from other animals, and so the fundamental way to stop future pandemics is go vegan, right? And we've also done one. I think we did one that Earthling Ed produced. We used that, where he's talking about how does it feel to be confined? When there's the lockdown.
Yes.
How does it feel to be confined? It's not very nice, is it? And well, how about thinking about all these other animals that are confined in factory farms and in zoos and blah blah blah? And so it was good. So there's 2 aspects really of the pandemic. The one that it's the viruses come from other animals, and also the fact that to get people to think about animals being confined in how we confine them as part of our oppression of other animals. And so we did that, like using that, something that very topical, people are worried about, people are thinking about, to get people to properly consider animals and other animals and to go vegan. But I haven't seen very much of that. I haven't seen very much of the movement
and the oppression video. Not much has come out. It seems as if nobody wanted to take advantage of the situation. As if we were being kept as busy as meat eaters and animal abusers trying to get through, and we forgot to take advantage, or we weren't interested in taking advantage because we were also bogged down with our own fears and trepidation.
Yes, I think that's part of it, and I think it's also a kind of thing like, I mean, we started advertising on social media because it got to a stage where, I mean, when it first started, and it looked like it's going to be lockdown and this thing, we said, right, okay, we're just going to, we're just going to stop doing stalls and all that, and we're going to go over to just door dropping, because that was the safest form of spreading the really
information,
and taking various precautions with that, but door dropping, and so that's what we went. I mean, those leaflets weren't out at the time because this was right at the beginning, and there was a lockdown, weren't there, in March of last year. When it got into February, it looked like something was coming and all that business, you know. And so we switched to the door dropping, and then it came to a stage that we weren't able, you know, the lockdown rules even prevented that. So, but we didn't say, oh, well, we can't do anything now. We just sit on our arses. We sort of thought,
yeah,
how can we, what can we do? And so I looked into how can we advertise on social media in our local area? Because the problem with just putting posts on social media about things is, you know, they tend to really, for the very large part, only reach other vegans, because, like, you know, most vegans on social media, their friends and followers tend to be like the same as them, and they're going to be, aren't they? I mean, 99% of my friends on Facebook, for instance, are vegan. So what's the point of me? There isn't much point of me putting a go vegan thing. So you already are vegan, you know. So you know, but a way to do that is if you advertise, and then what happens is that those posts get put on the news feeds of just, you know, people aren't vegan, and you can target them to like a local area,
of course.
And that means that you know, you're reaching like loads of non-vegan. We've had hundreds and hundreds of that. I think with our advertising, we've done a lot of campaigns. We've had, it must be approaching 7,000 people that have visited vegan website, or we've had, it may not be 7,000 different people. We've had 7,000 visits to vegan websites. You know, because and you know, who knows how many of those people, you know, went vegan. I dare say, you know, there's probably a reasonable proportion of them probably have done, you know, but no one else. Who else has done it? You see, I've kind of been saying right from when we kind of started that. I've said, look, you know, this is a way we can still spread the message. Of course. And I've said like, you know, in posts and stuff like that quite frequently. I've said, look, you know, if you want to learn how to do this, you know, how to do this, you know, social media advertising, I can help you, because it is a little bit. It was a little bit of a complicated thing. The thing is, if you've got a business and you're advertising a product, that's like really easy. You just kind of do it. But if you're doing an advert that's related to social or political issues, you have to get verified, and you have to like kind of, I had to scan in my driving license, send them that. I had to get a letter sent to my address with a code that I had to put in, and you know, and all that. And it does make that it is a pain in the arse, but you know, once it's done, and then you're set up and you're ready to go, you see, with it. And you know, it's all on, you can find out on the internet how to do this. And I said, look, anyone wants to do it, I'll help you do it, because like but I think two, you know, like I had two people out of all of it, two people got in touch. One was in the USA. If there was someone from a vegan group in this country, that was all there was. You know, what's the matter with you people? Do you not want to spread? You know, like, oh, we can't do it the normal way we do it, so like we're just going to not do anything.
Holiday, yeah.
You know you know what I mean? Like, kind of people weren't thinking outside the box and saying, you know, how can I find another way to campaign?
Yeah,
I think, you know, and they were saying, I can't campaign the normal way that I campaign, so I don't do anything.
Just won't do anything.
You know, and it's so successful, the advertising. All right, like each campaign we do costs 30 quid, and we're probably spending, you know, I don't know, £60 a month, a couple of campaigns a month, £60 a month.
That's not
bad. And so, like, you have to do a bit of fundraising and ask for donations and things, but like, it's good for the number of website visits it generates. It's well worth it, because it works out about, like, I don't know, 25p per person to look at the website. Well, like, I think if you could say, look, I'll give you 25p if you go and look at a vegan website, I think, you know, people think, well, if they're going to do that, you know, it's worthwhile, because like, if one person, if just one person goes vegan or adopts a vegan diet, that equates to like you know, 100 animals spared from suffering and slaughter every year. You know, like a real good return.
And what price can you put on that? That is life, priceless.
And you know, if you're giving out leaflets and doing things like that,
Yeah.
that all costs money. If you'd be doing that instead of the advertising, that and you'd be travelling. You don't have to travel. You sit at home on the phone or computer and you do it.
Yeah.
But if you're doing campaign, you've got to travel there. There's fuel, there's cost of materials, and there's all that. So like it's really I thought, really, and so when all this is over, if it ever is, that COVID thing, we're still going to carry on. We're going to carry on with it in addition to other sorts of campaigns because it was so worthwhile. Yeah, so successful in terms of like, you know, results.
Reaching people.
And we're going to do. We're focusing on a Christmas one now because Christmas people
turkeys.
We eat animals at Christmas and that, and so we've launched a Christmas campaign now. And then Veganuary, then when December you're into Veganuary, do your Veganuary stuff and all that like we did last year. But anyway, so that's the thing that, you know, I think it's disappointing that people haven't been imaginative in how to campaign during lockdown. Of course, when you haven't got lockdown, you can do, you know, the stuff people have, you know, have done when lockdown eases, and you're allowed to do certain things, and you know, people have been out and doing things, and you know, people are doing things.
The thing is, though, Ronnie, we found, I don't know if it's just because we're peculiar here, but we found it quite liberating because the time that we would have spent out and about doing shows and things, we were able, like you, to focus down on doing different things that still encourage encourage people to go vegan by being able to spend more time answering all the messages that we get from people like I'm a meat eater, but I want to go vegetarian. I think it's going to be too difficult to go vegan. Now, if all of us sitting at home had put our heads together, but I'm sure that the reason that nothing happened is that people were concerned, they were afraid, and for many of us, we'd never lived through anything like this. It's like we don't know what war was because we've never lived through war in this country. We'd never known a pandemic. I mean, I think the last thing was the London fog or something, wasn't it, that killed people, and that was in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean the smog.
None of us know that. Not many of us know that, anyway.
That only really applied to people in London or perhaps in other built-up cities, and you know where they had that problem. I mean, like for a large number of people. Whereas this is like everyone, isn't it? You know, and so I think that was the problem that like in terms of campaigning, that people haven't, you know, didn't react very well to it.
No.
I mean, of course, now people are allowed to do more. People are getting back to their old ways of doing things, you know, with the stalls, and there's been marches and there's been other stuff, and that kind of thing, which is another thing I've got things to say, something to say about, and maybe come on to that later. So that's the first problem, is like that kind of, you know, the sort of failure to carry on spreading the vegan message. And not being imagined enough to do it in a different way when your normal avenues are cut off to you. And I think we as a movement, didn't rise well to that challenge at all. Right, that's the first thing. I mean, secondly, then you had all this kind of stuff about, you know, this is like, you know, the whole COVID thing, whether it really exists, whether it's been serious, is this a huge conspiracy? Bill Gates is involved in it somewhere. You know, the usual thing, you know, coming out. And so many people kind of were gripped by that. And, you know, I've known vegans have conspiracy theories before, you know, be part of conspiracy, you know, take on conspiracy theories, but never ever like this. Never ever like this. You know, there's the odd one I know that denies the climate crisis, or denies that climate crisis is human generated. You see, because that's the conspiracies. No, this is, you know, it's all lies about the climate crisis. It's not being brought about by human activity. It's just something to do with like sunspots or something, right? well, 97% of scientific opinion says that it's, this is real and it's human.
Right.
So you've got had the odd vegan, but in general, I think most vegans have said, there is a climate crisis. It is created by humans, and we need to do something about it. And of course, animal agriculture and the kind of and also destruction of the oceans, through industrialized fishing and all that. Huge contributors to the climate crisis, may even be the biggest contributors of all when everything's taken into consideration. And then the fossil fuels and all that, of course. Once again, caused by human supremacism and speciesism. But anyway, but that's tended not to be a thing that, although it's another conspiracy theory, that's tended not to be took on board by vegans. Very few climate deniers in the vegan community. This has been very different. Like a number of people that either deny it exists, deny the seriousness of it. Right? And that's kind of where does that come from? I mean, I've got a theory about kind of how vegans can be inclined to be believing conspiracy theories.
Share it.
Well, my theory is that what happens is, like, we're kind of all going along, kind of living conventional lives. Some people are lucky enough to be brought up right from the dot as vegan, but most of us aren't, or haven't been. Most of us. I mean, I became vegan at 21 and vegetarian at 18. And before I was veggie, I didn't really think anything. I thought, we're just supposed to eat animals, and never thought about it, And then my eyes got open to that. But that was it. But the general, the sort of general view, the general kind of, attitude that permeates society is just that's just normal. We just eat animals, we drink milk, we eat eggs. It's just normal, and that's it. There's kind of nothing wrong with it, right? And then all of a sudden, your eyes get open to no, that generally held belief is completely wrong. That general held belief is like, just appalling. And what we need to believe is something totally opposite to that, and how we need to live is totally opposite to that. You see, so.
And I think, sorry to interrupt you, Ronnie. I was just thinking when you were talking that a lot of this, people quite rightly, I think, believe that this information is manifested by one of the most powerful industries in the country, which is the farming industry. It's made up not so much of small farmers these days, but large conglomerates, large landowners, people who have friends in the government or who are in the government. And I think it's very easy for people to, once they realize this, think, as you're saying yourself, everything else can fall into place as being controlled by another aspect of society.
You see, I think this is the thing. I think this is the thing. I mean, probably the biggest conspiracy in the world is to kind of pull the veil over people's eyes in terms of what is done to animals.
Exactly.
And I think this is kind of something that I'd like to talk about in a future edition of
course.
of our discussions. But you see, so that is the biggest conspiracy. That is, I'll say it in a minute. That is the biggest conspiracy of all, isn't it? And that's a real conspiracy. That's not made up. That isn't reptilians or Bill Gates or some other thing. That's like real. That's humans have done that, and that's true. There's no dispute over that. You don't need to argue over that. It's real that all these animals have been slaughtered. It's real that they don't need to be. It's real that we're being deceived. We're being it's been covered up. Of course it is. And now and again you get exposés, and now and again you get things that reveal it, and we're giving information to try. But people are like, it's been, people have been brainwashed not to look at that. Of course they have. And I think the problem is that once people like realize, shit, this really big thing in life, huge thing in life that I thought was okay isn't okay, and this thing that's considered normal and acceptable isn't acceptable. Everything's like it's like the world gets turned upside down, doesn't it? I think then what happens is you start thinking, hang on, what else have I been told? What else have I been led to believe? Which is also not true, which is also a kind of conspiracy to keep me from seeing reality. And so I think the problem is then that opens people up to lots of other stuff.
Yeah.
And like some of it is rational and some of it isn't rational. It's like at the time when I started becoming a vegan, believing in animal liberation, and then I kind of, also then started looking at other things in relation to human society, and I kind of became, I sort of became an anarchist. I'm not an anarchist now. I describe myself an eco-socialist, quite similar in many ways, because you see, oh, hang on, the politics and economics of our society is like wrong as well.
Of course it is.
And needs to, it's related to the oppression of other animals, it's related to the oppression of humans. This is, and so, you start questioning other things, you see. But the thing where we've got to be careful, I mean, it's like babies in bathwater, isn't it? That, like, it doesn't mean just because some things that we kind of accepted as being okay turn out not to be okay. That doesn't necessarily apply all across the board.
It doesn't.
And you've got a kind of you've got to somehow kind of be rational in your approach to things. What's the evidence for this? Where's the evidence for that? Of course, there's overwhelming evidence about the oppression of other animals. There's overwhelming evidence about the harmfulness of capitalism and neoliberalism. It's obvious. Like society. Why do we live in society where some people are filthy rich and other people are starving on the streets? I mean, that's obviously totally wrong, and we obviously need a different political and economic system where we don't have that. And so those things are pretty, like, it's rational to kind of be opposed to those. It's rational to want a different, a different way of living. But then you get onto other things, where the evidence for those things is
Exactly.
because people believe the Earth is flat. You can go on the internet and there's like loads of stuff. The Earth is flat. Well, how far are you going to go with conspiracy theories? You're going to end up believing the Earth is flat. Where do you stop? Well, which do you believe in? Which don't you? Which thing that is contrary to like scientific evidence? Do you believe, and which don't you believe? And some people do believe the bloody whole lot, the whole pack of cards, right down to
they don't question
flat Earth.
It's the secret. I was told many years ago by a very old man, who said, something that is right stands up to scrutiny, and you test it time and time and time again until it gives you the answer. And I think if you apply that to just about everything in life, it has to speak to you. Whatever you question has to stand up to being investigated. And as you say, very little in this world does stand up to being investigated. You always find something that really isn't right. But you can't, or one shouldn't, and can't say can't, but one shouldn't allow oneself to be carried along on a wave of suspicion, because not only does it take you away from the most important part of life, which is a transition to veganism, or being a vegan, or living a vegan life, but it can have mental what's the word, problems. It can create mental problems if one gets so involved in the fact that nothing in this world is right or isn't as it seems. And I think it's very, very important that one holds on to logic and holds tight to veganism, because that is the one key to everything else. To start with veganism, which is so massive and so important, because it addresses many of the aspects you brought up originally, but it also allows one to look at other aspects of life in a sensible manner, in an educated manner, and find the answers yourself.
Like, as I said, the biggest conspiracy in the world is to do with the oppression of other animals, and the attempt to conceal that and get people to kind of ignore that and to not, to go along with it. And so that, that's the conspiracy we've got to expose and fight and combat. That's where we should be focused.
Exactly.
Totally focused on that. And as I said, we do need to be able to filter out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. You see, the thing about science is never absolute. You see, it says that it never says this is definitely the situation. It says that this is highly likely to be the situation, or highly probable, probably the situation. It's never absolute, and that's very wise, because you don't know what else might come along to
2 days later
prove something a bit different. And kind of how I look at things like COVID, and also how I look at the climate crisis is that, look, if let's say I believe COVID is real, and I believe it's a very dangerous and serious disease, and I act accordingly. Right now, say I'm wrong about that. What are going to be like the consequences to me of being wrong? Right?
Nothing. You'll still be alive.
Yeah, I'll still be alive. I might have been a bit inconvenienced, like that. Right. On the other hand, what if I don't believe that COVID even exists, or I don't believe it's a serious disease, and I act accordingly to that? What happens then if I'm wrong? I'm fucked.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fucked, and I fucked a load of other people by spreading it, right? And so therefore, if we look about, if we use the what if I'm wrong principle, on these things, you see, that's to me, that's the safest way to go about it when you've got these somehow conflict.
Err on the side of caution.
Yeah, it's the same with the climate crisis, right? If I believe that this is something that's been created by humans, and through the burning of fossil fuels, through animal agriculture, and all that, right? I act accordingly. I encourage governments to act accordingly, and all that, right? Now, say if I'm wrong, what are the consequences of that? What are the consequences of that? Well, probably it's still good, because if we don't have fossil fuels, that's less pollution. If we don't have animal agriculture, that's great, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
And so
also, you start at home, Ronnie. by not using plastics at home.
Yeah, you start by
small changes.
Yeah, and so kind of it's still positive, even if the main thing weren't true. On the other hand, say I think it's a load of nonsense. There isn't. There's not a climate crisis. I'm going to still carry on. I'm going to support all this burning of fossil fuels and all this stuff, and I'm going to not do anything to try and combat that. Right? What are the consequences if that's wrong? What are the consequences of us not doing anything to combat the climate crisis? It's fucking devastation, isn't it? So it's obviously, you know what I mean. That's kind of that's sort of how I look at it. The consequences of sort of believing in human created climate crisis and being wrong, and the consequences of believing that the coronavirus is really serious, a real disease and really serious, and being wrong, aren't really that great, are they?
No.
But the other way round, it's devastation.
Very serious. Yeah.
It's
very
devastating.
Yeah.
And so that's to me that's a kind of really sensible way to look at it. And to err on the side of caution, yes, absolutely. I think that's really important. In really in life in general, isn't it?
It is.
But you see, you've got all the kind of I've got a cup of tea.
Lucky man.
But you see, what's kind of happened? It isn't just that you've got the people believing in his conspiracy theories. You've got then the nastiness that's arisen out of it.
Yes.
And the rows that have took place, where those people being nasty to other people being nasty back, and then you've got all that kind of stuff, right? And all the time it's diversionary. All that's diversionary to what we should be doing. What we should be doing
It's
right?
focusing down.
It's focusing on educating to be vegan, not being on social media or on Facebook, spending hours and hours and hours arguing.
Yeah.
I'm not, if someone's a conspiracy theorist, I'm not arguing with them.
No.
Because for one thing, if someone's irrational, how can you argue with them anyway? You fucking can't. You might as well just, piss up against the wall, to be
No,
quite
if
honest,
somebody has a different point of view,
Yeah.
I always think, if I don't agree with it, what is the point? I mean, obviously, there are certain things that I would say don't count there. If somebody has a different point of view to me about abusing animals, testing on animals, doing awful things to the environment, then yes, my mouth does open. But if people have a different point of view to things that are, they're addressable, then I really won't waste my time, and I do class it as wasting my time, getting involved, because there will never be common ground. And far better I spend my time talking to people who maybe aren't sure about how to become vegan, or aren't aware of how can anybody in this day and age be alive and not aware of the abuse of animals. But there are some, I guess, or they like to pretend they are, and I will gladly give my time to them, in the hope that by planting a seed, they will take it and they will nurture it and it will grow. But with people who are conspiracy theorists, people who come out with lots of different things to the way I think, I just think we're different.
Yeah.
We're different, and I will leave it, because I know I can't win that argument.
It's just a question of, like, you've only got so much time available. It's a question of how you're going to spend your time. I mean, I'd rather spend my time promoting veganism than in, arguing with someone where it's highly unlikely that it's ever going to go well. Even discussing someone where it's ever going to go somewhere, because that person's mind is so kind of affected in a way that they're never going to kind of even consider what I'm saying. So it's waste of time. And see, the problem is people have got into this trap, of arguing, and debating this to no consequence, when all that time could have been spent on vegan education and promoting people. So we don't have bloody any more of these things. Do you know what I mean? Because they're gonna come and this is only the first.
Of course.
If we don't do something, and the next one could be like
it's
10 times worse than this. Do you know what I mean?
We saw this as a warning, or we see this as a warning, that we need, all of us. None of us is immune from this, whether we're vegan, a meat eater, a person who lives on sunshine, whatever. We need to accept this as a warning. Stop the infighting. We really can't criticize each other. And I remember, and you no doubt will remember, within the animal rights movement, which was founded on veganism because we didn't want to be part of the horror. But it was an unwritten rule that we never stabbed each other in the back. We never openly, publicly criticized each other. And all our energy was focused on doing something, whether it was something insignificant and small, of which I was one, or something that was newsworthy, that was making society think and rock back on its heels, of which you are one. And we just got on with it. Even if we didn't agree with certain things that people did, there was never any open criticism. And this is the change now in neo-veganism, where they don't seem to, and I'm not being critical, I'm just stating a fact, they don't seem to have that unwritten moral conditioning that older animal rights vegans had. And I think this is where we're going wrong. It's people come into the movement, they bring their own rules and regulations with them. They don't know the ground rules. And it's not a club. I know it's not a club, but there are certain things that come with being vegan, and that is not stabbing somebody in the back because they think differently and they go about being vegan differently to you.
I think there's several things I'd say to that. I think I don't think we had a situation, back in the old days, if it's kind of going back to the 70s and 80s, those days and that. I don't think we had a situation where people never criticised one another. I think that did happen.
But they didn't do it
to some
publicly.
extent. Well, I think the difference is social media. We didn't have social media in those days.
No.
So your channels of being able to criticise someone and were much more limited. Now with social media, like you're on there, any bugger can go on there and run their mouth off, can't they? And I think that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. And I mean, social media is something we can talk about in a future episode. It's very important to discuss the pros and cons of it and how people can kind of use it in a positive way, not in a negative way. Exactly. But that's been a huge driver of this. That any Tom, Dick, and Harry can go on social media and have their
have their say.
And so that's one of the that's been a kind of major driver of that. I mean, I think it's okay to have rational discussion. I think that in order to formulate strategy and tactics, to decide on the best way forward, for the achievement of animal liberation, we do have to have a discussion about, what's the best way to go about it. And I mean, we do this in these, in these videos, and other people do. But it's sort of important that's done in a rational way and in a respectful way. And it's a discussion rather than a debate. Look, we're people here together. We all want animal liberation. We've got different ideas on how to achieve it. So let's discuss and let's kind of, have a chat in a situation of mutual respect in a rational way and try and work out what is the best way forward.
Of course.
Right? That's entirely different than trying to have a discussion with someone who isn't rational in their approach to the whole thing.
No.
And that's an entirely different thing. And it's not worth wasting time on that. It's not worth wasting time on that discussion when that time. But like, social media is a vast reservoir of wasted time, isn't it? Anyway, which is. That's again the subject of another discussion. So I think that's a problem. That in a sense, this kind of, you could say in a sense, there's kind of fault on both sides. I mean, like because you've got the people with the conspiracy theories, but then you've got people engaging and arguing them and all that. When really the time of those people would be better spent. I'm not going to bother with you. I'm going to get on with something that's kind of more positive in terms of like I'm going to go spread campaign.
The thing is, it has to be for the animals, and I think we all have to remember that rather than waste what limited energy we have, because we're all tied up with lives and homes and everything else that goes with a human life these days. So we have limited resources when it comes to time we can expend on educating people, on spreading the message, on talking, and I think we have to be very, very serious about our time and how we use it. And to my book, if you can spend 10 minutes talking to somebody about animal liberation, about animal abuse, about stopping humankind's use of animals these days, it's time far better spent than discussing or arguing about something that will never be reconciled.
Yes, I think that's very true. You've got to kind of cut your losses. You've got to, be wise about where you're going to respond to something, where you're not going to respond, because you haven't got, time is precious.
Time, yeah.
And so that's been there's been the whole debate about like, the status of the disease, status of the virus. Is it true? Isn't it? Is it, how serious is it? Is it just flu? As Donald Trump said, or is it something more serious? And all that, and there's been all that kind of, that's the one stage. And then of course, after that, we come on to the vaccine, don't we? The vaccine, right? And then this is another area of like big disputes and big, you know, fallings out and, you know, all that. And there's been a phenomenon fairly recently on Facebook, whether it's been on other social media as well, I don't know, where people have been, you know, someone puts on their, you know, profile, you know, vegan and vaccinated, and then other people are putting vegan and unvaccinated, and then of course all this is rows and arguments and all about like the kind of, you know, whether you should be have the vaccine or not have the vaccine. And once again, you see it's a bit, there's all these twists and turns in these things because, you know, where people are like COVID deniers, they're not all the same. There's some that say it don't exist at all, it's made up. There's others that say it does, but it's not as serious as they're making out. You know, so they're not all the same. And it's like the same with the vaccine. You've got like, I mean, there's two categories of like how people are kind of, I suppose, you know, the people that are kind of opposed to the vaccine. There's two categories. There's, you know, there's a category of people that think that this is yet another attempt to control someone, like, you know, Bill Gates has put something into the vaccine. And I kind of think, well, if what he's put in there is the Windows operating system, then injecting people with it is going to give them a load more viruses, isn't it? You know, but no, but there's that. Oh yeah, to control the world with his reptilian friends, he's put something in there, and you're all going to be like, you're all sort of, what is the thing? Sheeple, isn't it? You know, that species system. You don't, you know, you're insulting sheep, calling people sheeple. What's the problem? You know, that we go. You know, and so there's kind of that first of all that like it's either it's going to be used to control people. Like, well, are we not controlled already?
Of course we are.
You know. What about neoliberalism and capitalism? You know, let's kind of look at the real things that control us and that we need to overthrow. You know, anyway. That's going to do that. It's reptilians are somehow involved in this, of course, as well, as they always are. I mean, who needs reptiles when you've got humans? Who need, you know what I mean? Are humans bad enough without saying that these people are what's the fucking matter? You know? Oh, well, humans are really good, so they have to be like somebody from another planet doing all these bad things. Humans wouldn't do well. Hang on a minute, you know, sorry, but, you know, And so there's that, and then there's the ones about that. Oh, it's kind of that it's dangerous, that it's harmful, that it's gonna like kill people, and you know, and all that stuff, right? And there's that side of it. Oh, you know, it's like don't have it because it will kill you and it will fuck your body up, and there's that side of it where, you know, into it as well. And yeah, sometimes it does. I mean, you know, it's true that there are people that have died and had terrible side effects. But look, what's the percentage of that?
Yes.
What is the percentage of that? I mean, like any drug. I mean, like, kind of, you could say that about any drug. And so to be opposed to it on those grounds, you'd have to be like opposed to any drug, really, because. I mean, I remember taking these tablets once. I've been diagnosed with tablets. That's right. It's a problem I had with my feet, actually. And I looked them up on the internet, and they killed loads of people. Loads of people have died. Like in America, there was a huge case to sue this. And I phoned up the doctor and said, the doctor never told me this. See, this is wrong. I said, I've just read this. You know, there's fucking killing people. And she said, all right, well, we you know, while you're on them, you'll have these. You can do a blood test every so often to prove that it's because it was destroying people's liver. You see, like, and so it never did any good. It didn't work. I mean, I got better, but that was just kind of another way, but not through that. But this bloody thing was like, it was lethal. But like, obviously, that also probably had, you know, the number of people that happened to was only a minority of people that took it, you see. And it's the same with anything, like aspirin. Some people kill, you know. So do we not have any of these things? Do we not have any of these things? You know, you know, that's the big question. I mean, maybe some people say no, don't. You know, but you know, but in reality, does no vegan ever take a painkiller? You know, does no vegan ever take an antibiotic? You know, all these things of penicillin. You know, some people have terrible reactions to antibiotics. Yeah. You know,
I think
so. Isn't that a similar thing? And you've got to weigh up the good it does against the harm it does, because all of them are going to do that. All of them are going to do harm to some people.
Of course,
like nuts. So let's ban nuts. We'll ban nuts, shall we? Ban all nuts.
For the few people
not have nuts. You mustn't have nuts, because like some people have had an allergic reaction and kill people. Nuts. You know, so we won't have nuts. No one have nuts. You know. No one have soya. No one have any of these things for allergies, because they will kill people. I'm sure soya. You know. And
I think, you know, to think about it, Ronnie, people should be more focused on creating a future where medicine is less harmful to the animals that they're being tested on. We need to focus on a world where medicines, with the rise in the use of technology now, there is no need, you know far better than I do, there's no need to test on any animal. I think there are only 3 animals that will actually react as a human does, which is a cat, a ferret, and some primates. And it's normally on illnesses that they will react to as a human. But to test on rabbits and rats and dogs and everything else, you can't excuse it. You can't excuse testing, full stop.
No.
But when you hear something that they have to test on these species because they are prone, I think with the COVID-19 thing, the vaccine there, they couldn't test on many animals because not many animals react to it. They can carry it without it being harmful at all, so it can't be destroyed. But I really don't understand how we can waste our time on all these things. Is it right to be vaccinated? Is it wrong to be vaccinated? Yes, from an animal testing point of view, you have to ask yourself. But then are people, I think, because none of the COVID vaccines contained any animal ingredients, and they were tested on the blood serum of water fleas in the end, because they were the only ones. The blood of the water fleas was the only one, I think it was the serum, something like that, that would react as human serum would do, or human blood would do. And yes, water fleas in my world are as important as anything else. We're all equal. But we need to change what we can change now, not waste time fighting each other. And I think the thing is, we are so individualist these days. We're not a group anymore. We're individualist. We're for us as people, not as a group. And I think this brings about a lot of feeling that we can comment quite freely on each other. And it's not how it should be. We need to stand together to focus on the future. And when it comes to pandemics like COVID, we need to focus on a future where animals are not being used to find a treatment or whatever, a vaccine or whatever, where there's no animal involved, where we have to keep talking out and pushing for animal-free testing. We don't want it, we don't need it. But all the time we're thinking of ourselves and thinking we're better than the other because we don't, or we do certain things. Once again, we're wasting time. We're wasting energy.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, I agree. You know, absolutely. You know, the focus should be on, you know, developing and using non-animal methods of testing all these things. But I think, you know, coming back to, you know, the argument about the vaccine.
Mm.
And I've said the thing about, the arguments about like it's does more harm than good, and all that kind of thing. I mean, needs strong scientific evidence that like smallpox was eradicated through vaccination, and that polio was largely eradicated through it as well.
Mm.
I mean, there are people that might argue that's not the case, but it does seem to be the case. That's kind of sort of like one particular argument to do with it. But like, if you come on to that, the animal testing side of it, right? The animal testing side of it. The situation with the vaccine is that animals were tested on in development of the vaccine. Of all the vaccines, some animals. They need not have been used. I mean, obviously, that's totally wrong to use animals in any humans use animals in any way. Particularly in painful experiments. This is totally wrong, totally immoral. Totally unethical. Whatever the scientific arguments, I mean, the thing is that the Nazis did experiments on those. On those humans, on those beings they considered inferior for the benefit of the Aryan race. Now, even if those experiments had hugely benefited the Aryan race, they still would have been wrong. So it's not a question of whether these things work or not. It's a question of like,
morality.
It's the morality. It's wrong to do them anyway. So that's why I'm kind of always very wary of kind of using the scientific argument in terms of animal experiments, because I'm not a scientist.
No.
I'm not a scientist, but the moral argument is irrefutable. It's to do with these creatures. Why are you taking those animals experimenting on them? You have no right to do that. They have just as much right to enjoy their life as you have. You're not more important. Humans aren't more important than these other sentient beings. So leave them alone. If we have a problem, with an illness for disease, that's our problem. That's an internal issue for our species. Do not involve other animals in that. It's like if there's a problem with rioters and the police need to do something about it, don't use horses. Horses have nothing to do with that riot. You've got no right to. That's not their
problem. No,
that's not their problem. It's humans. Leave the animals out, and like countless examples of all this. They use animals when the problem is like an internal one for our species to deal with. Leave the other animals out of it. Do not oppress and exploit and abuse those other animals. For the supposed benefit of the human, because we aren't more important than they are.
We're not. We're definitely not.
And so that's it's a speciesist supremacist attitude that's led to animal experimentation. But yes, I mean, so and that's one problem with it. The second problem is that the batches of vaccine are tested for contamination. In other words, bacterial contamination using the blood of horseshoe crabs. Horseshoe crabs are bled because their blood reacts to this, and it's a good way apparently of telling whether it's each batch, and a load of these animals are harshly treated. They're all kept captive and in restraint to bleed them. And they say, we return them to the ocean, but loads of them die as a result of their experience, and it's a horrendous thing. But the thing is, there are alternatives to both those things. Like those things are wrong anyway. Even if there were no alternative, it would still be wrong. It's just point blank fucking wrong. But the truth is, there are alternatives. There are, vaccines could be developed without the use of animals at all, and it probably would be a quicker and more scientific way of doing it anyway. Secondly, they've got an alternative already to the use of the blood of the horseshoe crabs. It's just that it's just not what they're used to doing. Like the habit of years and years is to use that, and so they carry on using it. And also, it may be more expensive to use this other method, so it's not used. It could be. There isn't a need. It's wrong anyway, but like strictly, scientific grounds, there isn't a need to use it, but they still do. You see, and so the problem we've got is that these vaccines have, that the oppression of other animals has been used in the development and the like kind of testing of these vaccines, you see. And obviously that poses a dilemma for vegans, because we seek to, not, use animal products. We seek to not to buy into, the oppression of other animals, you see. And so we there is that dilemma that people face regarding the vaccine, and to me that's more in a sense that the sort of like, people that kind of are like saying, I'm not going to take the vaccine because of that, they're on, I would say, on more rational ground than people that are saying the virus don't exist, or Bill Gates is going to inject you with something, and all that bollocks. Do you know what I mean? I mean, yes, I mean that is like, yes, it is an issue.
It is.
That we have to carefully consider. You see, and it kind of is a difficult one, because if you believe that this is a serious disease, that's a killer disease, right, and that people can become very ill through this and need hospitalization, etc., right. Let's not forget that it's not our fault that animals have been used. They need not have been used. It's not our fault they've been used. So we're kind of not to blame for, if someone decides to have the vaccine, they're not to blame for the fact that animals have been used. Animals need not be, that they kind of were, so that person, you see. So what you're kind of doing, if you look at like kind of what is the actual effect, what is the actual effect of like someone having the vaccine, not taking any of the other things into consideration, all the other stuff that's going around, but simply with regard to the oppression of other animals. What's happening is that basically that you're encouraging money to be put into a company that oppresses other animals. That's what's happening. Like Pfizer and AstraZeneca and all these people, they develop them. These are animal, these are serial animal oppressors, and basically, those vaccines, they're not supplying them for nothing. They're paid for them. So, like, you could say that it's just in the same way you go in a place and you buy, say I bought something that had a bit of whey powder in or something. Well, of course, obviously, that puts a little bit of money into the people that produce the whey powder and into the oppression. So, as vegans, we kind of, in normal circumstances, would seek to avoid that.
Yeah.
Right. So yes, that, and that is the difficulty we have, that you're supporting an unethical company who may then spend that money. You see, those animals have like already been used. They're already been experimented. They're already dead.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring them back by refusing the vaccine. You're not going to bring them back.
Of course not.
Right. But like by taking it, you are putting money into those companies. Right. So that is, that is something to be weighed in the equation. Right. Now, on the other hand, if we as vegans, especially people that are vegan campaigners, right? First of all, if we get this disease and we become seriously ill and we die, then that that's going to affect our ability to campaign for animals. That's going to affect our ability, right? Secondly, if we become ill and have to be hospitalised, well, all the drugs that's put into you when you're hospitalised, they're going to test on animals, right? The blood of the horseshoe crabs isn't just used to test for impurities in vaccines. It's used to test for impurities in all injectable drugs, right? So if you're in hospital, you're ill with COVID and they're injecting you with stuff, that will have been tested. That will have been, batches of that will have been tested for impurities using the horseshoe crab, right? So you could end up in a situation where you actually, by not having the vaccine, you actually create more use, or you pass it on to someone else and they have to go in hospital, and then all that happens to them. You see, so it's not as simple as it first of all appears, right? And I think a very good like Gary Francione, right? I mean, he's a contentious figure within the movement, and he there's some things that I agree very much with him on, and others I don't, but he wrote a very good article about this, And if people search on the internet for Gary Francione and COVID vaccine, they'll find it. I'm when this goes on social media, I may put the link in the in the text.
Yeah.
But it's too complicated for me to say what it is. But it comes up straight away on a search, Gary Francione, and COVID vaccine, and he's written a very good article about all the ins and outs of this. All the ins and outs of is it kind of what is the sort of vegan position on taking the vaccine. And so it's kind of it's not as simple and straightforward, I don't think, as this has been tested on animals, therefore we shouldn't have it. There's more complications to it than that.
You have to look at the greater picture, the bigger picture.
Because there's also the lesser of two evils situation. You see, I've just talked about lesser of two evils. Like, is it all right? That's like we've contributed to kind of an evil by having the vaccine. But by having the vaccine, are you preventing a greater evil?
Exactly.
You see, and we do this all the time. But the thing is, we do this all the time in our lives.
Yeah.
You see,
in every aspect of our lives.
In every aspect. For instance, say on Saturday, like our vegan group, there was a local green fair, and we had a stall there. Promoting veganism. I mean, it was sort of more obviously because it's green fest, more environmentally focused, but we were giving information about like the plight of the actual animals that are killed, rather than just what the effect is on the environment as well. It was like there was a aspect to it as well. We had a stall at this event. Now, I had to go in my car to take that stall to that event, right? But going in my car. Right, first of all, I'm putting pollution into the atmosphere that could end up contributing to the death of wild animals, free living beings, because they're the main, all of that kills far more of them than it kills people, contributing to the climate crisis, which is like a massive killer of wild animals. And also, there was a risk of what if I ran over an animal? There's always that risk that an animal, squirrel, or something, run out in front. I could run. You're taking that risk, right? But I've made the decision, to go to and so that's a negative. Me driving the car to do that is a negative thing. For other animals, right? But I'm going there doing a vegan stall, trying to get people to go vegan, right?
The greater good,
For the greater good. So I've assessed that, like out the kind of, it's like, it's kind of in a sense sort of that, the kind of that it's justifiable. It's that small amount of damage done to other animals is justifiable in terms of the greater good done through doing the stall.
Of course.
And I've kind of made that, and we do it all the time. I mean, for instance, say our animals we have at home, dogs and cats. Well, we have them neutered and spayed, don't we?
Of course.
Well, they shouldn't be neutered and spayed, should they? Those animals shouldn't be interfered. Really, ideally, those animals would be living. Dogs would be wolves anyway. They've all come from wolves. Only impression of them by humans that they bred into all these things. Cats shouldn't be here. They should be out in the Near East. That's where they come from. Like we call the domestic cat, domesticated cat. They're not from here.
No.
And they're all bred and all that, like just for the human delectation, aren't they? And we take in the waifs and strays. So we're refugee camps for these.
Exactly.
You're running a refugee camp there.
Of course we are,
but then you see, then we have those animals neutered and spayed. Now that's the lesser of two evils, because you haven't got another. What's the consequence of not having them? The consequence of not in that particular situation, constrained situation in which we find ourselves. There is no third way.
No.
The third way would be like, right, okay, they're free. They're free living. They're in their natural habitat. We don't interfere with them.
No.
But that doesn't exist.
No.
So to choose the lesser of two evils, and in a way, an argument could be put forward, to do with the, I can understand, let me first of all say that I don't get involved. If someone asks me, have I been vaccinated? So I'm not telling you. So, because I don't want to get involved in that debate.
Exactly.
What I want to talk to you about is, what are you doing to spread the vegan message as a vegan? Because that's the important thing.
Yes.
Because if we hadn't oppressed other animals, we wouldn't have this bloody virus. And if we don't want more, we've got to educate people to go vegan. That's where we should be focused, not arguing about, someone's considered it personally and weighed up the pros and cons and made a decision. And there's other things to be made a decision on. And there might be people that are highly allergic to things. I know people that can't have the vaccine because they've got allergies and they're much more at risk from side effects and all things like that. There could be all sorts of reasons, and so that, to me, that's kind of, people weigh it up and they come to a personal decision on it, right? And I don't really want to get into the discussion on that debate. Because once again, it's a waste of time. What I want people to do is to go out and spread the vegan message, so that we end the oppression of other animals. We don't have any more pandemics, and that's like where I'm focused. And that's why I won't discuss it. I said, no, that's my personal decision. What you do is your personal decision.
Yeah, and
right? I mean, there's some people that will argue and say, "Oh no, you should stand up and say and put on Facebook, say what." But I say, but when you take the bigger picture into account of the oppression of other animals, getting into that kind of argument isn't the best thing. The best thing is, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about, well, like kind of how can we spread veganism, because that's the fundamental, that solves the fundamental problem, you see. And so, that's the kind of, the stance I take on it. But you see, the thing is that, it could be argued that we haven't got, the ideal situation would be that, like, we didn't oppress other animals, we never had a virus, we never had a pandemic, right? Or alternatively, that the thing had been handled sensibly from the first time. Because I think that what should have happened, I mean, it shouldn't be here in the first place, but what should have happened, right? There would have been no need for a vaccine had there been proper lockdown at the beginning. As soon as this started spreading, they realised what it was. Bang, lockdown. Bang, total lockdown. That first lockdown that we had here in this country, which I thought was lovely because it was so quiet.
It was brilliant. No things, nothing.
And animals were able to kind of, roam around a bit freer from the bloody human, right? Now, if we'd had this really lockdown, like, I mean, like, normally I'm in favour of, like, movement of people. I don't think people should be constrained in movement anywhere in the world. But like, when you get an overriding serious situation, right? No movement of people, limit movement of people, right? Bang, strict lockdown that we had. If that happened all over the world, it would have only taken probably a couple of months. The virus would have been eliminated because it wouldn't have been able to feed. It needs to pass from person to person to feed, right? To grow. You have that, right? We'd have been all back to, well, normal. I mean, normal.
Whatever is normal.
Whatever's normal is bollocks of it,
Back to how we were.
But we'd have been back to being able to go back to what we were within probably a couple of months. And we wouldn't have had all this shit about, like, all these people had died and had long COVID and then the horrible nightmare and all these, just nobody knows what they're supposed to do. This government fucks about.
Exactly.
You can do this. No, you can't. Go to work. Don't go to work. And all these bollocks that they do.
Go to the hospital,
right?
Go to the hospital.
Yeah. Just total, like, fucking bumbling fucking Boris, and all that. Right. We wouldn't have had none of that. Right. It would be gone. No need for a vaccine because the virus would be gone. It wouldn't have survived. And, like, maybe if it kind of did pop rear its head up a little bit, you're straight on it.
Yeah,
it's kind of straight down on it, and so that's how it should have been dealt with. But because of economic reasons, because they're worried about businesses can't make money.
No, we'll have
once again, we're back to the capitalist system, back to neoliberalism that kind of was all the time pressurized. We need to open up the economy, the fucking economy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's nonsense. Like, all we need is, like, we need to provide the essentials for people to live. And like our use of resources and our work and our energy needs to be put into the essentials,
Definitely.
And like, if the focus was on that, you know, when there was, if there'd been this big lockdown, people have easily been able to cope with it. Everyone could have been provided with what they needed. Everyone could be looked after, you know, and it wouldn't, you know, our you know, our economic and political, you know, system really throughout the world is totally, you know, the worst possible system you could have for dealing with something like this.
True, very true.
Because I was, you know, they don't. You got to open up. Oh, I'm losing money, my business. Blah 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 blah. Oh, we don't want to have to pay people that aren't working because that means we might have to tax the rich. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, like people have been sacrificed on the altar,
Exactly,
really, of capitalism and neoliberalism.
and it became so apparent.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
even, I can't understand how anybody could vote for that party in a million years, because even in my book, even for the die-hard Tories, they must at some point have sat there and thought, what the hell are they up to? It was a sham. It was complete mess up and embarrassing.
Yeah, but it's happened throughout the world. You know, we look
Yeah,
at our government. It's the same everywhere. I mean, New Zealand, you know, they did
she
well.
had quite quickly.
They've changed their policy now, which I think is a mistake. They went for eradication. We should have all gone for eradication throughout the world. And this is why, in a way, you need a world administration. You've got all these different nation states. I don't agree with nation states because it's bollocks. All that's happened is someone's been, you know, used violence to acquire an area and said, right, this is my, you know, my state. It's not at all anything natural. You shouldn't have. You should have one word, one people.
Exactly.
Right? You have to have administrative areas within that, of course, you know, like we have already with counties and parish councils and all that type of thing. But there should be a world administration, and then you can determine, because while they're all doing their own separate thing, how are you going to get an organised response to a thing like this? And you know, we've got things like worldwide problems, like the climate crisis is a worldwide problem. You know, like something done in one country affects somewhere on the other side of the world, you know. And it's the same with this. It's the same when you get a pandemic. So we need a world administration. So these are the rules for the whole of the world, right? And we need to deal with it on a world level. But of course we can't, because there's all these separate things going on, you know, and that's another thing. So we needn't have reached this. That really, if it had been dealt with properly, there would have been no need for a vaccine at all. It would have been the virus would have been eliminated within no time. And all it means is people just have to be, oh, you know, what's the big deal? What's the big deal in the lockdown? Yeah. You know, I can't cuddle someone. Why you can't cuddle someone for a couple of months? What's the fucking? You know, you're not going to fucking die. You know what I mean? You know, bollocks.
And then enjoy.
You know, you know, and like that's what should have happened, but it all went to fuck. And now we've had loads of people die, totally unnecessary, and loads of people suffer, totally unnecessary, loads of rows and arguments and all that's come from it. The bottom line is that there would have been no need for the vaccine. It had never arisen had it been handled properly. But the point is, it wasn't, and we're where we are, and we have to deal with the situation as, you know, kind of as we are, and. To me, you know, the answer is for vegans to stop, you know, arguing about the thing, and to, you know, to concentrate on spreading veganism, to concentrate on outreach, because you know that's the way we're going to. Apart from the other things like when you ending the oppression of animals, having animal liberation, and that's kind of the most important thing. But like to end. That's the only way that we're going to end these things. We're going to get more and more and more and more. And that's the answer. That whatever people feel about the vaccine, whatever personal decision persons come to us to whether to have a vaccine or not have a vaccine, the answer, you know, the real fundamental answer to this is to prevent another one coming, because it will. If we don't end the suppression of other animals, that's the cause of this. We're going to get we're going to get like wave after wave of different you know, and so that's, you know, that's why I said, you know, less time spent arguing about this, and let's, eyes on the prize. Let's focus on,
True. And perhaps
creating a vegan.
Perhaps we need to start a conspiracy theory, Ronnie, that all these things are being sent to take our minds off animal liberation, and then people will focus down.
Well, yeah, because because they are doing that, aren't they?
Yeah.
That
And it's
people
a conspiracy
are spending
by
all
the
their time
farmers, no doubt.
sort of raring about this and discussing, all these different elements of it, where people are arguing, on social media and spending their time doing all that instead of focusing on what they really should be doing.
Yeah.
And that is, spreading the vegan message.
Of course.
I mean, a load more there's a load of vegans that, argue on social media and they never do anything to spread the vegan message. So they need to start doing it. And ones that do it should be distracted from it by this.
Yeah.
Because this is the fundamental response to the pandemic has to be vegan education. Of course. Because we would not have had it if all humans were vegan, we would not have had this. And the only way that we're going to stop this in future is to, massively increase veganism and to put an end to human supremacism. When there was a lockdown, of course, there was this like big emphasis on non-essential. Non-essential things aren't going to be happening. And you're only concentrating on essential things. But I think that's how we should be anyway, isn't it?
Of course we should.
Why do we want fucking non-essential things? Because the thing is that anything that's kind of really not essential, like to create that and run that, needs resources. And where do those resources ultimately come from? Those resources ultimately come from the natural world. And so that will impact our wanting something that's fucking non-essential impacts negatively on other animals and on the natural world, doesn't it?
It does.
So we should really, as much as possible, just be focused on, what we kind of like actually really need.
Yeah.
To live, to thrive, and to be happy, and not on like a load of. I mean, what fucking nail bars? What do you want nail bars for? Bullets,
no idea.
Bullets, isn't it? I mean, that's just one example. I mean, I'd kind of, there's loads of things, like,
Of course there are. There are many
that we don't need. I'm trying to think of a thing that men don't need. There's loads of shit that we don't need in there as well.
They don't need the gym.
Well, I think I think it's important for people to keep fit and healthy.
Yeah, but they can walk. They can run.
Yeah, there's other things.
They can take the dog for a walk. They can offer to exercise dogs in a pound.
And so of course, the problem is that loads of people are clamoring after non-essential things. Well, loads of other people haven't even got the essential things. They haven't got the basis for life. They haven't got a roof over their head. They haven't got food. They haven't got healthcare. Well, all these resources and energy is put into bollocks for some people. Other people, are perishing because they can't get the essential things because we don't concentrate on just providing what's essential for people. And that's wrong. And once again, it's to do with capitalism, it's to do with market forces, liberalism. And so we have to have a different sort of economy and a different sort of politics. So that no one should be homeless. No one should be without healthcare. I mean, part of the reason why the virus has been so devastating is because, over the years, the NHS has been eroded.
Of course it has.
We need a massively, a much bigger, more effective NHS, not one that's been eroded and privatised.
I think we look, and I'm sort of I was born into a Tory home, but I've become more left as I've grown older. I suppose I'm a lefty socialist, but I do think that this has shown us that we need to have non-private healthcare, non-private gas, electricity, telephone. It all needs to be government run so that a government has control of making sure we have those resources for people who suddenly find themselves unable to work, or if they're sick, or if they have a family at home. I'm all for people going out there and doing stuff and making £1 million and paying the tax on whatever £1 million tax is. And I'm there for people to achieve something. I like the thought of people being able to go out and create things, not at the cost of animals or people who are not as maybe go get it as they are. But there are certain things in this world that should be for everyone, not just for those people who have a regular good income. And as you say, nobody should be homeless, nobody should be without healthcare, and nobody should be hungry. And really, when we look deeper into veganism and we're talking about oppression, we start off with the oppression of animals. And when we open our eyes, we see oppression all around. And that has to be addressed, and not immediately, because people are finding their feet, they're finding a new diet, they're finding a gentler way of life, and they're finding out facts that probably they would rather not know, but they have to know. But in the bigger picture, veganism is a part of a free world, of a caring world, of a society that is not for individualists. It's a society for everyone. And we have to achieve that.
Yes, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think the important, I think all those things that are essential to human survival and well-being should not be the subject of private enterprise.
No.
And should be publicly owned and run. Now, that I don't think necessarily means that it's through the government. It could be through community enterprises or something like that.
That's a better idea.
But they should not be run for profit.
No.
And you see, this is a major. This kind of really sort of also comes back to coronavirus and vaccines and all those things. Is that there's quite rightly mistrust of the pharmaceutical industry. There's quite rightly mistrust of that by people, because the primary aim of that industry is not to cure people, is not health. The primary aim of that industry is to make profit, because they're a private industry, right? Right, and this is the problem, that the primary aim of a company that sort of like produces so-called health products or drugs or whatever should be caring for people, should be curing people and all that, right? So all those things should be publicly owned. They should be publicly owned, because what tends to happen is, because their focus is on profit, they'll kind of, like, remember thalidomide and how they fought tooth and nail against efforts to bring them to book over that, because they were more interested in profit than they were in human health when it came down to it. And this is the problem. And so it's quite understandable that where these are commercial enterprises, people don't trust them, because their primary aim isn't human health.
No.
And the other problem, the other problem is that they kind of rely on humans being ill to make a profit. If people weren't ill, well, they wouldn't need drugs, would they? People weren't ill, and so there's no emphasis on prevention, or little emphasis on prevention. Like almost all illnesses we have in this country are the result of people's lifestyles. People smoking, people drinking, people eating a shit diet, and drugs, and all these things that are preventable, right? Through education or through other measures. Like, for instance, I don't think it's like, I think food that contains more than a certain amount of salt, or more than a certain amount of sugar, or more than a certain amount of unhealthy fat should not be sold. It should not be permitted to be sold, because people are very vulnerable, and people become addicted to those things, and then they're preyed upon by companies that make those things, and those people become ill, and they're unable really to do anything about it themselves. They become ill, and these companies make so that shouldn't be allowed. Really, that the only all stuff that's sold for human consumption. I mean, obviously, no animal product should be, but it goes beyond that. You can get vegan food that isn't healthy. You can get vegan food, but some of the processed food that contains loads of salt
and sugar,
fat, You could argue Coca-Cola's vegan, couldn't you? That it don't contain animal products. I don't think it does. I never drink the place, so. But it contains like millions of spoonfuls of sugar. It's absolutely shit. It shouldn't be allowed. Fucking just straight away ban it. You know, and you know, like children and all that, bring them up on not to be so used to sweet things. You know, like have a bit of fruit juice or something, diluted fruit juice, and get used to that. You know what I mean? And dried fruit and that instead of like the, you know.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, exactly. I like, you know, I drink lots of water, but it's always like tea making it. Yeah. But anyway, but you know, it's like, yeah, you know, and this is, and that would prevent massive prevention. But of course, you prevent these things. Well, that's no money for the pharmaceutical companies, is it? No money for them. And of course, the government supports those bastards, and they're in league with them. And so they don't want to have legislation, you know, encouraging people to be healthy. They don't want to put money into encouraging people to have healthy lifestyles, do they? Because that's like, oh, their mates and them as well, because they're all tied up in all this. Then they're going to lose money. You know, the pharmaceutical industry relies on people being ill, and this is another thing against it. So it's not surprising that people completely mistrust that. You know, I can kind of totally understand that, and you're like picking your way through this minefield of weighing things up. You know,
and also people don't like to be told what they can and can't do. It doesn't matter whether they're vegan or not. They like the freedom of choice, and once again, it comes down to education. To educate people of the consequences of their choice of diet.
Yes, I think so, but I think also because people are very, I think people are very vulnerable, and a lot, you know, like we talk about particular people that are vulnerable, don't we? Like they're supposed to be like a very small category of people that we class as vulnerable. But I think like the majority of humans are vulnerable. I think the majority of humans are vulnerable to being conned, to being made addicted to things.
True.
And so the task of a government is to protect those people from their own vulnerabilities.
Definitely.
You know, and not to.
It's their duty of care.
Yeah, it's a duty of care. You know, I believe that a government exists. I mean, in the sense, like I kind of, you know, would like to see a different sort of political system where you don't have governments in the same way as we do know, like in terms of nation states. But you know, even if we have that, you know, the duty of government, the prime duty of government is to care. You know, to care and protect the citizens of that state, right? And that means, you know, not allowing things that would tempt them into doing things that would harm themselves. You know, not like you know, not you know, giving companies free range to sell harmful products that people are going to get addicted to, and that they're, you know, and then those people suffer and die themselves, and then there's a huge burden on the health service as well.
Of course.
You know? And so, you know, there's all these different intricacies about the whole thing. You know, when we're talking about health, we're talking about drug companies and all that. You know, and all this kind of is, I think, one of the reasons why they're not trusted, and probably one of the reasons why, you know, conspiracy theories abound, because, you know, you're dealing with, you know, an industry that can't be trusted.
It's true.
So that's another
the government
thing.
Can't be trusted.
The government that can't be trusted. No. But you know, the problem is that, you know, they're only there because people voted them in.
Exactly.
And so we have to do something about educating people. Otherwise, we're going to carry on having these fucking lunatics forever, aren't we? So we educate people to think differently and have a different mindset, and so therefore they vote differently. And once again, we're back to vegan education, aren't we?
That's it. It all starts with veganism. It all starts there.
Starts and ends with veganism, doesn't it?
It does.
Of course, another thing that comes into all the COVID business is really to do with that. I think to do with the concept of freedom, really. Like you have these people that go on these so-called freedom demonstrations, freedom marches, like we want to be free of the COVID restrictions and all that. You know, we want this freedom not to wear a mask and all that. And there's a lot of right-wing people involved in those things. You know, because you've got a lot of right-wing people that don't want the state to interfere. They just want to be able to do what they want, which of course often means the oppression of all the people. Because you know, one a lot of people do what they want, it means that, that other people can be harmed by it, obviously. And so you've got, there's like, some very dodgy people involved in those protests, and they've gone in hospitals and disrupted hospitals and threatened people and all sorts of terrible business. But I think it's kind of, I think the word freedom is used kind of, I don't know, it's sometimes sort of given an importance or status or kind of perhaps a meaning that it doesn't really deserve, you see. And I'm always very aware of that, because I think it's a sort of double-edged sword, or it's a thing that's got a double meaning, or two meanings. And I've never liked, there's that slogan, human freedom, animal rights, one struggle, one fight. I've never liked that.
No.
I've never liked the human freedom aspect of it, because isn't the reason why animals are oppressed because humans according themselves the freedom to do whatever the fuck they like?
Of course.
You see, so there's a very negative aspect to human freedom, and so I'd rather it was like social justice, animal rights, and that grabs me. Or really social justice, animal liberation, but then that wouldn't rhyme with one struggle, one fight, would it? I mean, whether the idea of one struggle, one fight, that is kind of perhaps a subject of another discussion, because is it one struggle, one fight? Is it, or are these two struggles, two fights, or are they separate? I mean, that's that's something else. That could take us ages.
That could be dissected.
That's interesting. But the human freedom thing I don't like, and the reason is because basically that there are two sorts of freedom. There are two very different sorts of freedom. There's freedom to and freedom from, right? There's a freedom to do stuff. Oh, let's do anything we want without constraint. That kind of freedom, right? That's freedom to. And freedom from is to be free from things, to be free from oppression, to be free from hunger, to be free from illness. In other words, have proper health care. To be free from, to be free from cold, to be free from, fear, and freedom from. And it's freedom from that's the important freedom. The freedom to is so often a harmful freedom, because like freedom to, you've got free enterprise, haven't you? Freedom to just buy and sell anything, no constraints on trade. Exactly. And of course, what happens with that is, you get the people that are capable of doing that, they rise to the top, they make loads of money, and the people that aren't capable of that, they're at the bottom, they got nothing, they're starving, they're on the streets, and that's freedom too. So freedom too is, to me, it's not a good thing. It leads to a horrendous thing. So we want freedom from. We want freedom from, freedom from all the things that can, prevent someone from being able to live, being able to survive, being able to be healthy. Those things you're freedom from, right? And freedom from demands the curbing of freedom to. Because if we're going to have freedom from those things, you've got to get rid of the idea of people just doing what they want. There's got to be, redistribution of wealth. It means taxation of the rich. It means controls on, on freedoms, right? And so I think this is why, I don't like to just use the word freedom, because it's got this double meaning. It's got this really bad meaning, and it's also got this good meaning in terms of freedom from. And we need to be, freedom from is the important thing. And the difficulty I have with these people on the freedom marches is their demand of freedom means another person's lack of freedom.
Exactly.
What about, where's the freedom of the person that dies from COVID because those people have spread the disease through not taking, the precautions? The elderly person or the vulnerable person that dies, where's their freedom? What freedom have you got?
It's been taken from them
when you're dead. You see, so this is the problem, that you've got a situation of people wanting freedom too, right, that impacts on other people's freedom from.
I think you would.
And that's what I don't like. We need to have a society where we have freedom from things.
Yes.
You know, and where we have, you know, these basic things that everyone has. You know, everyone's got a roof over their head, everyone's got food, obviously, you know, no animal products in that food.
Exactly.
Everyone's got proper health care,
Mm.
you know, and all those things that are necessary to, you know, and freedom from not having those things. You know, that's kind of what we need. And I think this is kind of, we've seen this sort of very emphasised in the COVID situation, where people are wanting, I want freedom from, I don't want to have to wear a mask.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but what about the person that is going to maybe get the COVID because you're breathing it out over them? And what about their freedom? You know what I mean? Yeah.
There has to be consideration with all
Yeah.
the freedoms that we want, with the rights to freedom that we want. We have to be considerate of others. If we're not considerate of others, we're not decent people.
No.
And it just, to my way of thinking, the two go side by side. Yes, we want, as you say, freedom from. We have so many rights in the West that we have freedom to do so many more things than other countries where they're kept under a dictatorship. But we can't neglect consideration. Even if we feel we don't want to do something like wear a mask or socially distance, we must consider those who are health-wise, that they're suffering or they're at risk, and then we can just get on with our lives, but not at the cost of other lives. That is quite wrong.
That's right. I think the problem with dictatorships is dictatorships actually impact on freedom from. The dictators are there to kind of, usually for selfish reasons and for the reasons of a particular class of people, for their gain, and other people's loss. So therefore, that's, you know, that is not just impacting on people's freedom to do things, it's also impacting on people's freedom from, you know, from harm, basically. And you know, to me, the role of a I support big government, you know, although whether it should be government or whether it should be known as administration, because I'd like to see a completely different political system. But I think that the administration is there to care for people, look after people, make sure people are okay, make sure that, you know, they've got all the basic necessities, make sure they're not preyed upon from people trying to exploit their vulnerabilities. That's what we need. We need, you know, a big, caring nanny state, or nanny, whatever you might call it, a nanny society that will look after the vulnerable. And nearly everyone's vulnerable in one way or another. That's the kind of decent way that society should operate, not giving everyone freedom to do what the fuck they want. Because of course, again, that, you know, impacts on animals, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
I do whatever I want in the world. Don't matter how that impacts on other animals, on the natural world. And you know, and we accord ourselves freedom. Oh, we're the big human. We ought to be able to do whatever we want. And no, you know, sort of reel yourself back in. Do you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have that freedom, you know, because otherwise, where's the freedom for those animals that are killed as a result of your activities, whether it's directly killing those animals or whether it's doing some harm to the environment that results in those animals suffering and dying?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think this kind of comes on to really back to the movement and people being responsible. You know, what's happening now is we're seeing a lot of events where people are starting to gather again. You know, Camp Beagle, there's a lot of people together there. We had the vegan camp out. We've had, you know, the big march in London, the Animal Rights March. And, you know, it concerns me that these could be real spreaders from COVID. The disease is very much with us. I think the figures are rising.
Yeah, today they went right up. Yeah.
It's not gone. We've got the winter coming on. It's not gone. If we get more variants, the more of it's about, the more variants you get. You don't know whether one might be like even more lethal than what we've got now. People still need to be very, very careful and consider others.
They have to.
And I'd like to say, I mean, it's important, like we've been talking about, you know, the ins and outs of the vaccine, and, you know, people being focused on rowing about that when they should be focused on vegan education, right? Yeah. But what people can do that doesn't involve the vaccine And what does ensure considerable degree of protection for other people is to take a lateral flow test. Lateral flow test tells whether or not you're infectious. In other words, whether or not you've got enough of the virus in you that will spread to other people.
Others, yes.
Right. And that it's very simple. Takes 15 minutes. In fact, it doesn't take 15 minutes. You'll leave it 15 minutes in the meantime and do something else.
Yes, exactly.
Very, very, very quick. And I'd say anyone that's going anywhere
should do
where
that.
there's going to be a lot of other people, you know, wherever it is, a demo or a gathering, if it take a lateral flow test, right? It's not 100%. None of these things are 100%. It's not 100%, but it's a pretty reliable guide to whether someone's infectious or not. So everyone should do that. I do. If I'm meeting other people, if I'm going anywhere with other people, I'll take one of them. And I mean, the moment they're free, the government's talked about they're going to charge for me, which I think is a huge mistake. Once again,
Also, Ronnie, I think the good thing is, like, I did a show recently, and there were lots of people, vegan show, and lots of people were not wearing masks, and we were all stuck together in a decent sized room, but there was no airflow, and I wore a mask because I thought, I really don't want to be ill. I don't want to even risk infecting anyone else. But I did a test 3 days after I got back, just to make sure. Although I'd done one before, I just wanted to be sure that I hadn't inadvertently picked something up.
Yes.
And they say a mask is good, but it can't guarantee 100% that you're protected.
No, none of these things are 100%. But if you put them together, then it reduces the. And I think, I think if you're outside and you're a fair distance from people, well, fair enough, you don't need to wear a mask. But if you're going to be close to people, you're going to be indoors. Wear a mask. It's not going to kill you, is it? But you might have COVID, not know about it. That might kill someone else.
Exactly.
Be responsible. It's only a little thing. What the bollocks matter with bloody people?
It's only short
it's only just be be like a decent sort of human. You know what I mean? And protect other people. And the other thing is take as near as possible to when you're going to go out to that event. Do a lateral flow test.
Exactly.
If you're negative, fine. If you're not negative, don't go. And then you have to kind of look into a bit more. About the COVID.
Of course.
But everyone should be doing that. Let's all be responsible to each other. We don't want to spread this illness to to anyone really, particularly not to other vegans and other animal rights.
We need every one of us.
These are only little things.
Yes.
In the scheme of things, these are only really small inconveniences, aren't they?
They are. And in the bigger picture, they're nothing. And yet, if we all do it, as boring and tedious as it might be or feel, it's proven it can save lives.
I mean, it's all reducing. You're never going to reduce the risk of it down to nothing.
No.
But you can reduce that as much. And we should all be responsible. We should all be doing that. And to me, that's part of being a vegan, isn't it? Isn't it part of being a vegan? That you're considerate to others. That you don't want to do harm.
No.
I mean, it depends. I mean, I do considerable harm to animal abusers, but like, we're not talking about animal abuse, are we? Talking about other campaigners, other decent people that we want to protect. And so I'd say, because I've been, looking at photographs and videos, the vegan camp out, it horrified me how people were close together and marches and other things. So people, please be sensible. Let's, we need to protect each other, and we need to be responsible.
And I think what I found most disturbing, as much as I love to see people I haven't seen for ages, is the number of people who came up minus mask and hugged me. And as happy as I was to see them, and as lovely as it was to have a hug, I couldn't help but think, don't breathe, Wenda. Don't breathe.
I think sometimes these things are not, but sometimes I think there's other things of overriding importance. It's not going to kill you, not going to kill anyone not to have a hug.
No.
But it might kill you if you get COVID, or it might kill another person if they get COVID. So, let's just, I mean, the problem is, of course, that this could have been dealt with ages ago. There's been a report, hasn't there, really condemning the government
Of
for.
course, yes.
I mean, the way they behave was disgraceful. But in fact, nearly all governments behave disgraceful because, like I said earlier, they should have had a severe lockdown at the beginning and carried it on for 2 or 3 months, and the virus would have been gone. And that's what they should have done. But no, because of reasons of economy, people want to make money.
Yeah,
they didn't do that. You know. But there we are. But we've got to do the best we can with what we've got, and a large part of that means people being really careful. It's only a little thing, but the consequences of not doing those little things could be really devastating.
Well, it'll be devastating for the animals if lots of vegans get COVID and pop off.
Well, I already
there's few of us anyway fighting for liberation.
I mean, I already know 3 vegans that died of COVID. Elderly people, but and so more likely to, obviously more likely to die from that. But younger people can die as well. You can get young people, like succumb to this. So, let's all, think about each other, and let's all be really careful.
Definitely.